3 weeks after the battle, Ambassador HFY stood in the rebuilt conference hall of the Galactic Council, watching representatives from 47 different species argue in hushed, nervous voices. The emergency session had been called by the Aquilan Republic, officially to discuss recent military developments affecting interstellar stability. Everyone knew they were really here to talk about the humans. The hall itself showed signs of rapid reconstruction. Scorch marks from hegemony bombardment still darkened some walls, while new sections gleamed with fresh materials. It was a visible reminder of how close Zalara Prime had come to total destruction, and how quickly everything had changed. HFY adjusted the formal diplomatic robes that felt strange after weeks of living in emergency shelters. His family was safe now, returned to their home in the capital city that humans had saved. But safety felt different somehow, more fragile, more dependent on the goodwill of beings who had revealed themselves to be far more dangerous than anyone imagined. The human delegation requests permission to address the assembly, announced Secretary General Vorthon, her crystalline voice carrying across the vast chamber. A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. In the 3 weeks since Task Force 7 had annihilated the hegemony fleet, no human representative had spoken publicly about what had happened. Earth's diplomatic corps had maintained their usual, polite, measured responses to all inquiries. "We are pleased the crisis has been resolved peacefully," they said. "Humanity remains committed to galactic stability and mutual cooperation." As if erasing 3,000 warships from existence qualified as peaceful, Admiral Chen entered the chamber alone, wearing the same black uniform she'd worn during the battle. But now HFY noticed details he'd missed before. The subtle energy patterns in the fabric that suggested advanced defensive systems. The way other delegates unconsciously stepped back as she passed. The absolute confidence in her bearing that spoke of someone accustomed to wielding overwhelming power. She took the speaker's podium without ceremony, her gray eyes scanning the assembly with what might have been mild interest. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly without amplification. "I understand there are questions about recent events in the Zelaron system. I'm here to provide answers." Senator Quill Thex of the Aquilan Republic was the first to speak, his feathered crest bristling with barely contained anxiety. "Admiral Chen, our military analysts have been unable to explain the weapons technology your fleet employed. The complete destruction of enemy vessels without conventional energy signatures violates known laws of physics." Admiral Chen nodded calmly. "Senator, what you witnessed was the practical application of quantum manipulation technology. We call them reality anchors. Devices that selectively alter fundamental constants within localized space. When properly calibrated, they can effectively remove matter from this dimensional plane." The silence that followed was absolute. HFY felt his diplomatic training kick in, translating the humans' casual words into their full implications. Humans didn't just have superior weapons, they had weaponized reality itself. Representative Zektar of the Silicon Coalition spoke next, his crystalline body flickering with stress patterns. "Such technology. The research required would take millennia. How long has Earth possessed these capabilities?" "About 40 years, Admiral Chen replied. "We had excellent motivation to develop them quickly." "Motivation?" Senator Quill Thex's voice pitched higher with alarm. For the first time, Admiral Chen's expression shifted, revealing something darker beneath her professional calm. "Senator, humanity has been studying galactic history since we achieved interstellar flight. We've observed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. We've watched peaceful species get conquered by aggressive ones. We've seen entire star systems turned into graveyards." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We decided early on that we would never be victims. If threats existed in this galaxy, we would be prepared for them." HFY thought about Earth's history, the endless cycles of conflict, the rapid technological advancement, the way humans had approached galactic diplomacy with careful friendliness while maintaining strict control over their military capabilities. What he'd taken for cautious policy had actually been strategic deception on a massive scale. "Admiral," interjected High Counselor Vexthera, "are you saying Earth has been developing these weapons specifically to fight species you hadn't yet encountered?" "Counselor, We developed these weapons to fight species like the hegemony, aggressive empires that expand through conquest and destruction. Our intelligence services have been tracking similar threats throughout the galaxy for decades. Admiral Chen activated a small device at her wrist, and the chamber's holographic display came to life. Star maps appeared, showing red markers scattered across known space. Dozens of them, representing threats that most council members had never heard of. The hegemony was just one of 17 major aggressive powers we've identified, Admiral Chen continued. The Void Reapers in the Perseus Arm, the consuming swarms near Galactic Core, the machine orthodoxy beyond the Veil Nebula, each one capable of destroying everything you consider civilization. Representative Mex Andra of the Peaceful Worlds Alliance spoke in a voice that trembled with understanding. You've been preparing for war, while the rest of us focused on peace. No, Admiral Chen corrected firmly. We've been preparing for war, so the rest of you could focus on peace. Someone had to be the galaxy's immune system. Someone had to be ready when threats emerged that diplomacy couldn't stop. Kethvar found himself remembering conversations with human diplomats over the years. Their subtle questions about military capabilities, their interest in trade routes and defensive positions, their careful mapping of political alliances. What he'd seen as academic curiosity had actually been intelligence gathering by a species that had appointed itself as the galaxy's hidden protectors. Senator Quilthex raised another question, his tone carefully controlled. Admiral, if Earth possesses such overwhelming military superiority, what prevents you from imposing your will on other species? The question everyone was thinking but hadn't dared ask hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If humans could erase fleets from existence, what stopped them from becoming exactly the kind of threat they claimed to guard against? Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment, and Kethvar caught something unexpected in her expression. Exhaustion. Not physical tiredness, but the deep weariness of someone who had carried a terrible burden for too long. Senator, have you ever wondered why human colonies are always established in remote systems? Why we avoid prime real estate that other species want? Why our trade agreements are always scrupulously fair, even when we could demand better terms? She gestured to the assembly around them. We stay away from you because we know what we're capable of. Every human military officer swears an oath to protect life, not to rule it. We've seen what happens when species with advanced weapons try to build empires. They become the very monsters they once feared. So we watch from the shadows. We prepare for threats you can't see coming. And when something like the hegemony appears, we deal with it quietly and efficiently, then return to our distant systems and try to sleep at night. High Counselor Vexthara leaned forward in her chair. Admiral, are you saying humanity sees itself as guardians of galactic peace? Counselor, we see ourselves as the species willing to do what's necessary when peace fails. Every civilization develops according to its nature. You developed art, philosophy, trade, and cooperation. We developed the capacity for controlled, precise violence. Admiral Chen's smile was sad and tired. We're not proud of what we are, but we're very good at it. And apparently someone needs to be. Representative Zektar's crystalline body shifted through a spectrum of colors before he found his voice. What happens now? Do you return to the shadows? Do we pretend this conversation never happened? That, Admiral Chen said, depends on you. Earth is willing to continue our current arrangement. Quiet protection in exchange for being left alone to manage threats as we see fit. Or we can formalize the relationship, create mutual defense protocols with full disclosure of capabilities and responsibilities. Kethvar understood the choice being offered. The galaxy could return to its previous ignorance, pretending humans were just another peaceful species while relying on them for protection against threats most civilizations couldn't even comprehend. Or they could acknowledge reality and accept humanity as the violent guardians they'd always been. There is a third option, Admiral Chen added quietly. We could withdraw entirely. Pull back to Earth and Sol system, leave the rest of the galaxy to handle its own problems. Let species like the hegemony expand naturally, without interference. 1. The absolute silence that greeted this suggestion was answer enough. Without human intervention, the hegemony would have turned Zalara Prime into molten slag before moving on to the next defenseless system. How many other threats had humanity quietly eliminated over the decades? How many civilizations owed their continued existence to humans they'd never met? Senator Quilvex spoke first, his voice carefully diplomatic. Admiral, the Aquilan Republic believes that formalized cooperation would benefit all parties, with appropriate oversight and transparency protocols. One by one, other representatives voiced similar positions. The choice was obvious, even if it meant acknowledging that galactic peace had always been maintained by humanity's willingness to wage precise, terrible war on threats that emerged from the darkness between stars. Kethvar watched the votes tally up and realized he was witnessing a fundamental shift in how the galaxy understood itself. For centuries, peaceful species had believed that diplomacy and cooperation were sufficient to maintain stability. Now, they knew better. Peace wasn't the natural state of the universe. Peace was something that had to be actively protected by those willing and able to destroy anything that threatened it. As the session ended and delegates filed out in subdued conversation, Admiral Chen approached Kethvar directly. "Ambassador," she said, "I wanted to thank you personally for your assistance during the crisis. Your people showed remarkable courage." "Admiral," Kethvar replied, "I think the galaxy owes humanity a debt we can never fully repay." Chen shook her head. "Ambassador, the debt runs both ways. Your people give us something to protect. Without civilizations worth preserving, we'd just be another violent species with too much power." She paused at the chamber exit. Looking back at the assembly hall, where the future of galactic politics was being quietly negotiated. "The universe is a dangerous place, Ambassador. But it's also beautiful. As long as species like yours exist to create art, knowledge, and hope, humanity will make sure you have the time and safety to do so." After she left, Kethvar stood alone in the nearly empty chamber, thinking about hidden fleets patrolling the void, about weapons that could unmake reality, about a species that had chosen to become monsters so that others could remain innocent. Outside the hall's windows, stars shone in patterns that looked peaceful and eternal. But now Kethvar knew the truth behind that false tranquility. Somewhere in the darkness, human ships moved like ghosts, hunting threats that most beings couldn't even imagine. The galaxy was safe. It always had been safe, and that safety had a price that only humanity was willing to pay. Walking home through streets that still smelled faintly of reconstruction materials, Kethvar looked up at the night sky and whispered a quiet thank you to the distant star called Sol. He had a feeling he wasn't the only one doing so. Peace wasn't free. It never had been. But for the first time in his life, Kethvar understood who had been paying the bill.